In the most significant moment, when everyone expected vows of love and fidelity, the groom suddenly revealed a horrifying secret, plunging the entire ceremony into chaos, ending in blood and tragedy. What turned a radiant bride into the victim of a shocking crime? Do you dare to hear the rest of the story? Edwina Robertson was born into a noble family, the only daughter upon whom her parents placed great expectations to become a remarkable role model. As the only child of a real estate mogul, Edwina's childhood was marked by the rigorous selection of private schools, equestrian lessons, and debutante balls. From a young age, she understood the importance of maintaining a flawless public image, a lesson that would become a turning point in her life. Despite the outward appearance of an enviable life, Edwina's family life was far from peaceful. Her father Andrew's strict nature and her mother Iris's constant oversight left little room for genuine emotional connection. Amidst this emotionally cold environment, Edwina found refuge in her studies. She excelled academically, eventually discovering a deep passion for art history. Her dedication and intellect earned her a place at a prestigious Ivy League university, where she thrived in her studies but struggled to find her place socially. The relentless pressure to uphold her family's reputation, coupled with her desire to carve out her own identity, led to a series of tumultuous relationships. Edwina's life became a balancing act between the polished exterior she presented to the world and the deep-seated insecurities that plagued her. Despite her outward success, Edwina was constantly searching for validation, particularly in her romantic relationships. She was often drawn to men who could provide the excitement and attention she craved, but these relationships were intense and fleeting, never offering the stability she claimed to seek. During this period of her life, Edwina met Raymond Williamson, a man whose quiet confidence and genuine nature attracted her. She saw in Raymond the possibility of the life she had always been told she should aspire to. As their relationship deepened, Edwina convinced herself that Raymond was the solution to her inner turmoil, the key to becoming the person she had longed to be. However, as their wedding day approached, her carefully constructed facade began to crumble, revealing the complex and conflicted woman hidden beneath. Raymond Williamson's upbringing was a world apart from the privileged life that Edwina Robertson had known. Born to a small-town doctor and a high school English teacher, Raymond was raised in a close-knit community where values such as hard work, honesty, and loyalty were esteemed far more than material wealth. From an early age, Raymond exhibited a natural affinity for science and an insatiable curiosity about the world. His parents, recognizing his potential, nurtured this curiosity, encouraging him to explore and question the environment around him. Summer vacations were not spent in luxury resorts, but rather on camping trips in the great outdoors and visits to science museums. These experiences ignited in Raymond a deep passion for environmental conservation. Despite his academic achievements, Raymond never allowed success to cloud his humility. He was well liked by his peers for his down-to-earth nature and willingness to help others. Whether it was tutoring classmates who struggled in school or volunteering at the local animal shelter, Raymond's kindness was always genuine, expecting nothing in return. This integrity became a defining feature of his character, one that would guide him throughout his life. His dedication to his studies earned him a scholarship to a prestigious university, where he pursued a degree in environmental science. It was during this period that Raymond reconnected with his cousin, Chad Williamson. Although Chad hailed from the wealthier side of the family, the two formed a close bond, with Raymond often acting as a calming influence on his more reckless cousin. After graduating, Raymond's love for the natural world led him to join a non-profit organization focused on protecting endangered species. His work took him to some of the most remote and beautiful places on Earth, but also exposed him to the harsh realities of environmental destruction. Witnessing firsthand the impact of human activity on fragile ecosystems only deepened his commitment to conservation. It was at a fundraising event for his organization that Raymond first crossed paths with Edwina Robertson. Her beauty and intelligence captivated him instantly, but it was the vulnerability she tried so hard to conceal that truly touched his heart. In Edwina, Raymond saw someone who, like him, yearned for something more profound and lasting than what their external circumstances might suggest. As they grew closer, Raymond became convinced that Edwina was the partner he had always been searching for, someone who shared his values and could challenge him intellectually. He imagined a future where they would embark on shared adventures and work toward common goals, a life filled with purpose and love. When the time came, the proposal felt like the most natural step, and Raymond poured all his hopes and dreams into planning a future with Edwina. Yet, unbeknownst to him, the trust he held so dear was about to be tested in ways he could never have anticipated, shaking the very foundation of his beliefs. Meanwhile, Chad Williamson, Raymond's cousin, played the role of the black sheep in their family with a mix of defiance and pride. Born into the wealthier branch of the Williamson clan, Chad had every material advantage at his disposal, but lacked the emotional support that Raymond's upbringing provided. His father, a high-powered corporate lawyer, was rarely home, and his mother sought comfort in social gatherings and prescription medications. Left to his own devices, Chad developed a rebellious streak, using his charm and good looks to manipulate those around him, engaging in increasingly reckless behavior as a means of coping with his inner turmoil. Despite the turbulence of Chad's home life, he possessed a rare combination of sharp intelligence and effortless charisma that naturally attracted people to him. When he chose to focus, Chad excelled academically, but more often than not he was the ringleader in a string of rebellious antics. It was during one of these escapades that he first forged a meaningful bond with his cousin Raymond, who visited for a summer break. Raymond's calm demeanor and genuine care for Chad's well-being left a lasting impact. For the first time, Chad felt truly understood and valued, not for his family name or for his ability to entertain, but for who he was at his core. That connection with Raymond became one of the few stable and grounding forces in Chad's otherwise chaotic life. As they grew older, however, their paths diverged sharply. Raymond pursued his passion for environmental science with dedication, while Chad drifted aimlessly between college majors, unable to find a direction that held his interest. He eventually landed a job at a tech startup, not because of any particular passion for the work, but because of the appealing lifestyle it offered. His personal life mirrored this lack of focus. A series of failed relationships left Chad disillusioned with love, yet he continued to seek validation through fleeting romantic conquests. His reputation as a charming rogue grew, and in his wake he left a trail of broken hearts. When Raymond introduced Chad to Edwina, something in Chad's world shifted. Here was a woman who matched him in wit and complexity, who understood the burdens of coming from a well-known family. What began as playful flirtation quickly spiraled into a dangerous attraction that Chad knew he should resist, but couldn't. As the wedding day approached, Chad found himself torn between his loyalty to Raymond and his increasingly deep feelings for Edwina. The emotional conflict within him began to unravel his usually composed exterior, leading to erratic behavior that would ultimately set the stage for the devastating events that followed. Raymond and Edwina's engagement was hailed as the event of the season, a dazzling union of two prominent families. Raymond's heartfelt proposal on a moonlit beach in Costa Rica, with an ethically sourced diamond ring, perfectly reflected his values. Edwina, enchanted by the romance and the promise of a secure future, had accepted without hesitation. As news of the engagement spread, the Robertsons were pleased with their daughter's choice, despite quietly finding Raymond's non-profit work a bit quaint. The Williamson family, for their part, welcomed Edwina with open arms, charmed by her grace and devotion to Raymond. As wedding preparations began, cracks started to form in their seemingly perfect relationship. Edwina, shaped by her mother's societal ambitions, pushed for an extravagant affair that would make headlines. Raymond, true to his modest values, wanted a smaller, more intimate celebration. Though they reached compromises, Raymond often felt his concessions were one-sided, agreeing to a larger guest list and grander venue than he felt comfortable with, all in the name of love. Meanwhile, Edwina's frustration grew, interpreting Raymond's reluctance as a lack of enthusiasm for their union. The stress of wedding planning soon took its toll. Edwina became irritable, lashing out at Raymond over trivial details like tablecloth colors or wine selections. In an effort to avoid conflict, Raymond buried himself in work, leaving many decisions to Edwina. During this tense period, Chad's role in their lives grew. With his quick wit and easy charm, he became both a source of comfort and a confidant for the couple. Raymond, grateful for his cousin's support, didn't notice the subtle but dangerous connection forming between Chad and Edwina. Small moments of eye contact held too long, or hands that brushed just a little too closely. Edwina began to anticipate Chad's visits with a growing sense of excitement, savoring the unpredictability he brought into her increasingly structured life. She assured herself that her attraction to Chad was nothing more than pre-wedding nerves, a natural reaction to the immense pressure of planning such a significant event. However, as the wedding day loomed, the tension between her and Raymond intensified. A heated argument over something as trivial as seating arrangements ended with Edwina in tears and Raymond storming out of their apartment. Chad, ever the opportunist, arrived shortly after with a bottle of expensive champagne and a listening ear. That night, as Edwina shared her fears and frustrations, the boundaries between comfort and desire blurred. In a moment of weakness, they shared a kiss that would set into motion a series of events spiraling toward disaster. The next morning, guilt washed over Edwina, but the passion from the night before lingered. She convinced herself that indulging in one last thrill before the wedding wouldn't harm anyone. Raymond didn't need to know, and it would be her final taste of excitement before settling down. Unbeknownst to her, this decision would soon unravel everything she had so carefully constructed. What began as harmless flirtation between Edwina and Chad quickly escalated into something much more dangerous. Their stolen glances and secret touches evolved into clandestine meetings, igniting a torrid affair. Their first rendezvous occurred under the guise of wedding planning, with Edwina asking Chad to help pick out a surprise gift for Raymond. As they sat together in a dimly lit hotel bar, the chemistry between them was undeniable. Chad's hand brushed hers, and in that electrifying moment, all pretenses vanished. They made their way to a room Chad had booked, fully aware of the gravity of their actions. Afterward, guilt set in, but the thrill of their forbidden love was too addictive to resist. What should have been a fleeting mistake transformed into an ongoing affair, complete with secret codes and alibis. The thrill of near discovery only fueled their desire. Whether it was a stolen moment in Edwina's office or a passionate encounter in Chad's car, the danger only heightened the excitement. Close calls became part of their routine, like the time they narrowly avoided Raymond discovering them at a family gathering, or when a mutual friend spotted them holding hands across town. Each time they crafted elaborate lies to cover their tracks, unaware that their carefully hidden affair was already hurtling toward a tragic end. As the wedding day neared, the intensity of Edwina and Chad's affair deepened. Edwina found herself constantly comparing Raymond to Chad, always concluding that her fiancé fell short. Raymond's steady, predictable nature seemed dull next to Chad's wild spontaneity and dangerous allure. The life she had once envisioned with Raymond now felt suffocating, and she began to question everything. Meanwhile, Chad, who had entered the affair as just another conquest, was falling harder than he ever expected. He fantasized about a future with Edwina, willfully ignoring the devastation it would bring to his cousin Raymond. Though guilt gnawed at them during quieter moments, the thrill of their illicit relationship overshadowed any remorse. They both knew the destruction their affair would cause if discovered, but the heat of their passion clouded their judgment. As their fantasy took hold, the line between reality and desire blurred. They made impossible promises, all while the wedding day loomed closer, a ticking time bomb. Raymond, usually proud of his intuition, was blind to the betrayal unfolding around him. Edwina's sudden attachment to her phone and her irritability, explained away as wedding stress, planted seeds of doubt. But it was Chad's odd behavior, avoiding family events and casting guilty glances, that finally sparked Raymond's suspicions. As the wedding approached, Raymond found himself spiraling into a pit of suspicion and denial. He wanted so desperately to believe in Edwina's love, to trust the future they had envisioned together. But the mounting evidence was too hard to ignore, and the weight of his doubts began to crush him. His behavior shifted. He became distant, lost in thought, often zoning out during conversations. The passion he once had for his work faded as his personal life unraveled. Friends and family noticed the change, attributing it to pre-wedding stress, oblivious to the storm that was brewing beneath the surface. 2 weeks before the wedding, Raymond reached his breaking point. He confronted Edwina, hoping for an innocent explanation. In their shared apartment, he questioned her directly about her relationship with Chad, his voice trembling with emotion. Edwina responded calmly, feigning innocence and brushing off his concerns. But as Raymond laid out his suspicions, secret calls, unexplained absences, and the guilty looks between her and Chad, he noticed the cracks in her composure, subtle signs that confirmed his worst fears. Despite Edwina's denials, Raymond refused to back down. He meticulously outlined the specific incidents that had fueled his suspicions: her secretive phone calls, the sudden absences, and the guilty glances exchanged with Chad. Edwina, now visibly defensive, insisted that Raymond was overreacting, attributing his concerns to pre-wedding stress. She repeatedly emphasized her love for him, questioning why she would ever jeopardize their relationship. As the confrontation grew more heated, Edwina proposed calling Chad to validate her story, a move that made Raymond more uneasy. He noticed the slight tremble in her hand as she dialed, putting the call on speaker. Chad's voice came through, calm and composed. He backed up Edwina's claims with ease, providing explanations for every detail Raymond mentioned. The seamless coordination between Edwina and Chad left Raymond feeling exhausted and defeated. Their united front seemed too perfect, only deepening his internal doubts. By the end of the conversation, Edwina attempted to soothe the situation, dismissing Raymond's worries as the result of wedding-related anxiety. She urged him to refocus on their upcoming marriage, but Raymond, emotionally drained, could only nod in response. As he gazed into Edwina's eyes, he realized that everything between them had shifted irreparably. The trust that had once been the foundation of their relationship was gone, and with it, the future they had planned began to unravel. The morning of the wedding dawned with bright skies, but inside the luxurious bridal suite at Rosewood Hills, the atmosphere was anything but celebratory. Edwina sat before the vanity, surrounded by her bridesmaids, who fussed over her hair and makeup. Her reflection stared back at her, pale and tense despite the meticulous cosmetics. The weight of her deceit pressed heavily on her chest, making it difficult to breathe in her intricately beaded gown. Across the estate, Raymond stood stiffly in the groom's suite. His best man adjusted his bow tie, but Raymond remained silent, lost in thought. His calm exterior hid the turmoil raging inside. The decision he had made that morning weighed on him heavily, both inevitable and terrifying. Chad entered the room late, his usual confident smile not quite reaching his eyes. Raymond watched his cousin in the mirror, noting the restless energy that emanated from him. Their eyes briefly met, and Chad quickly averted his gaze, unable to face Raymond's steady look. As the ceremony drew nearer, the tension in both rooms grew unbearable. Edwina fought back tears, smudging her carefully applied makeup. Raymond's hands trembled as he fastened his grandmother's watch, a family heirloom he had once imagined passing down to the children he and Edwina might have had. Outside, guests began to arrive, blissfully unaware of the emotional storm brewing inside. Their excited chatter filled the air, and the soft melodies of a string quartet added a serene contrast to the mounting chaos behind closed doors. Then came the announcement. The wedding planner's voice echoed through the rooms, calling everyone to take their places. 3 hearts pounded, Raymond's, Edwina's, and Chad's, each filled with a mixture of dread and anticipation. The moment of truth had finally arrived. The grand ballroom had been transformed into a floral paradise. Garlands of white roses and delicate sprigs of baby's breath adorned every surface, their sweet fragrance filling the room. Sunlight streamed in through the floor-to-ceiling windows, casting a warm glow over the assembled guests. As the music swelled, all eyes turned toward the back of the room. Raymond stood at the altar, his face expressionless as he watched the bridal party make their way down the aisle. Beside him, Chad fidgeted nervously, his eyes darting between Raymond and the entrance. Then the bridal march began, and Edwina appeared in the doorway. A collective gasp rippled through the room. She was breathtaking in her gown, a masterpiece of lace and silk that seemed to float as she moved. Yet those closest to her could see the strain in her smile, the slight tremble in her hands as she clutched her bouquet. As Edwina made her way down the aisle on her father's arm, her eyes locked with Raymond's. In that instant, a silent exchange passed between them. Raymond saw the fear and guilt swirling in Edwina's gaze, while she recognized the cold detachment in his. It sent a chill down her spine. The ceremony began, the officiant's words a distant hum in the background. Edwina's responses were automatic, her voice barely audible. Raymond's vows, while clear, lacked the warmth and love usually expected on such an occasion. As they reached the exchange of vows, the tension in the room became palpable. Guests shifted uncomfortably in their seats, sensing the unease emanating from the couple. Chad stood rigid, his face pale, as though anticipating the disaster about to unfold. "Raymond," the officiant said. "You may now recite your vows to Edwina." Raymond took a deep breath, his gaze sweeping across the room before locking onto Edwina. When he finally spoke, his voice was calm but carried a weight that settled heavily in the air. "Edwina," he began, "I'm not here to recite vows of love and fidelity. I'm here to speak a truth that can no longer be ignored." A ripple of confusion swept through the crowd, and Edwina's eyes widened in panic, fully grasping what was about to unfold. "For weeks now, I've suspected that the woman I thought I knew, the woman I was ready to build my life with, has been living a lie." Raymond's voice grew stronger, the pain and anger he had suppressed for so long now fueling every word. "Not just any lie," he continued, "but one that strikes at the core of trust and family." Gasps echoed through the room as his words sunk in. Raymond's gaze shifted to Chad, who stood paralyzed, his face drained of color. "Edwina, you've been having an affair with my cousin, the man I trusted to stand beside me as my best man." The silence that followed was suffocating. Edwina stood frozen in place, her bouquet slipping from her hands and landing softly on the floor. Chad instinctively stepped back as if physically distancing himself could undo the damage. "I have proof," Raymond said, his voice cracking as he revealed emails, text messages, and hotel receipts. "While we planned our future, you two were sneaking behind my back, betraying not just me but everyone here who came to celebrate what I thought was our love." Chaos erupted. Edwina's mother screamed, her voice filled with anguish, while her father stood, face reddened with fury. Raymond's parents remained in stunned silence, their eyes darting between their son and their nephew. Amid the uproar, Edwina finally found her voice. She pleaded with Raymond, trying to explain, insisting that he had misunderstood. But Raymond had reached his breaking point. He was done listening. Turning to the bewildered guests, he apologized for the deception under which they had gathered. Then, with a final declaration of the wedding's cancellation, Raymond stepped down from the altar, his heart heavy with betrayal. As he passed Chad, he stopped momentarily, his voice filled with sorrow. "I once thought of you as a brother," he said, his words laced with disappointment. The guests watched in stunned silence as Raymond slowly made his way toward the exit. But just as Raymond neared the doors, a commotion erupted at the altar, drawing everyone's attention back to Chad and Edwina. In the midst of the confusion, Chad reached inside his jacket. Time seemed to slow as he pulled out a small handgun, its silver barrel gleaming under the lights. Edwina, the first to recognize the danger, screamed his name, her face contorted with fear as she cried out. The sound of her panic cut through the room, snapping everyone's attention to Chad. Raymond turned, disbelief written across his face as he saw his cousin raise the gun, his hand trembling. Panic gripped the crowd. Guests ducked behind chairs, others scrambled for the exits, and the string quartet fled, leaving their instruments clattering to the floor. Yet through the chaos, Raymond remained unnervingly calm. He addressed Chad in a measured tone, trying to talk him down. "Put the gun down, Chad," Raymond urged. "This won't fix anything." But Chad's eyes were wild, unfocused, his mind lost in a whirlwind of emotions. He ranted incoherently about broken dreams and shattered futures. Edwina, her gown now in disarray, inched closer to Chad, her voice trembling as she begged him to stop, to see reason. For a moment it looked like her words might reach him. But then, in one final act of desperation, Chad's resolve hardened. In a flash, Chad tightened his grip on the trigger. Edwina lunged toward him, trying to wrestle the gun away, while Raymond sprinted desperately to shield her. The tense moment exploded with the deafening crack of a gunshot, echoing through the ballroom, freezing everyone in stunned silence. For an agonizing second, no one knew who had been hit. Then chaos erupted again. Edwina crumpled to the ground, her once pristine white gown quickly darkening with crimson. Raymond rushed to her side, all the anger he had felt forgotten in the face of the nightmare unfolding before him. He cradled Edwina, panic and sorrow flooding him. Chad stood motionless, the gun slipping from his hand and clattering to the floor. His face reflected sheer disbelief, as though he couldn't grasp the gravity of what he'd done. Raymond, his voice shaking, pressed against Edwina's wound, desperately trying to stop the bleeding. He pleaded with her to stay awake, to hold on. His earlier feelings of betrayal had vanished, replaced by an overwhelming desire to save her life. Edwina's eyes fluttered weakly, her breath shallow. In a hoarse whisper she tried to speak, but only managed a faint apology before a cough brought blood to her lips. It was clear to both of them that time was slipping away. Guests frantically called for help, while those with medical knowledge rushed to Edwina's aid. Amid the chaos, Chad remained still, in shock, as Raymond's father and a guest restrained him. The wait for the ambulance felt endless. Raymond, holding Edwina tightly, whispered words of comfort, but her responses became fainter with every passing moment. By the time paramedics arrived, it was too late. Edwina Robertson was pronounced dead, her life cut short in the very place where she should have started a new chapter. The police arrived and took control, as the weight of the tragedy hung heavy over Rosewood Hills. What should have been a day of love and joy had turned into a nightmare that would haunt everyone there for years. In the months that followed, Chad Williamson was charged with second-degree murder and sentenced to life in prison, his once promising future destroyed in a fit of jealous rage. Raymond, stricken with grief and guilt, left his job and sought solace in the remote wilderness, trying to escape the memories of the life he had lost. This tragic story serves as a powerful reminder of the consequences of betrayal and personal ambition. When trust is broken, the repercussions go beyond just the relationship, hurting everyone involved. Don't let regret and poor decisions lead your life into darkness. Cherish honesty and loyalty, as they are the foundation of any lasting relationship. If you found this story meaningful, please like the video and follow the channel to ensure you don't miss other valuable lessons.